On this Thursday NFL edition of the OFN Today, Ted Sevransky of Covers.com joins me to update each division in the NFL and their prognosis moving forward in the second half of the season, as well as some insight on key games this week. Scott Engel, the managing director of RotoExperts.com, will offer his expertise on some start-sit decisions this week in your fantasy leagues. And Packer Report publisher Bill Huber will also stop by to talk Green Bay Packers football as the OFN Today on the Our-Lads Football Radio Network starts now. All right, it's Thursday, October 25th, 2018. I'm Greg DePalma. Thanks for tuning in to the OFN Today. The OFN Today is brought to you by OurLads.com, providing the best pro and college football depth charts on the net. RotoExperts.com for great in-depth fantasy analysis and insights from Scott Engel and his team at RotoExperts.com. And Covers.com featuring live score, stats, and odds, considered the most convenient and entertaining source for sports news and facts with over 45 million visits a year. All right, so we are at the midway point, Ted, in the NFL. This week, some of the teams. Next week, the rest. And I figured it would be a good opportunity to go over each division and see how things fare compared to what we thought when the season began. So we'll do that starting in the AFC in just a bit. But before we get into kind of going through everything, regarding a handicapping perspective, anything different this year at all besides the overs?
Well, and the irony is that the overs aren't on a ridiculous pace because the markets catch up. But one of the things, you say what's different this year.
Uh-huh.
And I'm going to call the Chiefs different, but they're not different because we've seen the NFL marketplace routinely undervalue the best teams. When you look at the Patriots over the previous two seasons,
okay,
and what happened if you bet New England, just bet on the Patriots every week in the regular season. Ridiculous point spread runs, enormous profits for Patriots bettors, enormous losses for sports books. What are we seeing this season? Well, lo and behold, here are the Chiefs. They've covered every point spread, and week in, week out, right now, the wise guys, no, we don't believe Kansas City. Look at their stats. The exact same thing they were saying with New England last year, the exact same thing they're saying with New England the year before. We're seeing some of that with the Rams as well. So the betting market reluctance to accept the best teams as really being the best teams, I'm not going to say it's different, but it's certainly something that is worth noting about this season's NFL betting marketplace.
All right, let's go ahead and get started. First of all, with the AFC East and the New England Patriots, and there's no reason to think that anything's going to change this season. They have a one-game lead in Miami. The Jets are 2 back. The Bills, unfortunately, have to start Derek Anderson again because Josh Allen is out. That'll help him out with draft picks next season for a little bit better of a slot position. But as far as the Patriots, how do you feel about them going into the second half and another Super Bowl run compared to what you've seen from them the last few years? Any different at all?
No. The Patriots are going to win this division. Miami's hot start is now, a long way in the rearview mirror, and every game that Brock Osweiler starts, it gets even further in the rearview mirror for Miami. The Jets are a long way away. The Bills are a long way away. This division was decided before the season began, and that was, what was the Patriots had to lay 10 to win $1 on New England to win the division. I think it might have even been higher than that. The markets knew it, and the markets still know it. New England's the class.
Yeah, but as far as them as a Super Bowl team, do you think it is more of do we judge the Patriots on the Patriots, or do we judge the Patriots more on their competition?
Well, the funny thing is that New England beat Kansas City. They didn't cover the spread.
That's true.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
But they beat Kansas City, and everyone I talked to, it's Chiefs. It's Chiefs to beat.
Uh-huh.
The Patriots certainly have a history of winning games on the road in January. They can't win on the highway And it's not like the Chiefs have this dominant edge in the postseason.
Especially if they have the games at home, and that's going to be something to keep an eye on, which is also why I think when we talk about games that the Patriots are in where they're favored, like last week with the Bears, maybe there'll be a letdown or something. I mean, Patriots understand how important it is to keep pace with the Chiefs so they can get home field advantage. They don't want to go to Kansas City in the playoffs, not to say they can't win, but we all know that they have a much better chance to go to the Super Bowl if they're at home.
Yeah, I mean, but they're not the only two teams to talk about in the AFC. I mean, the Chargers are certainly making a case for themselves as being someone to take seriously when it comes to postseason footballs. And, the Texans played their best game of the season last week, and certainly have some upside when you talk about that team and if they can get healthy.
But is it any different, though?
The Steelers do coming off the bye this week.
But is that competition any better this year, and the Patriots not as good this year as in years past? Would you say that?
I've got a lot of concerns about New England's defense.
Of
concerns about it. I'm not convinced they have a championship level defense. Offensively, they'll be fine.
How about AFC championship defense?
But look, we've seen it. We saw it in the Super Bowl.
Oh yeah,
we
sure.
saw it against the only offense they faced this year that can really move the football in Kansas City. When they face a dynamic attack, the Patriots defense doesn't get stopped.
No, that's true. And I only look at that as I still, though, like you just said, though, we know what the Patriots are going to do and what to expect from them. And we know that Tom Brady, when he's in the playoffs, if he has to, he's going to put up a lot of points unless he's facing a dominant Denver Super Bowl championship defense from a couple of years ago, which there aren't any of those defenses right now that he has to compete with in the AFC. So it's really going to be up to the competition. It's going to be up to whether or not Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs and any of these other teams can actually step it up when they have to. And at this point, we just don't know. I mean, we know what the Steelers provide, but do we know about the Chargers or the Chiefs? We don't.
The Chargers have a defense. The Texans have a defense. The Ravens have a defense. That's three teams that they could well meet in the postseason that all have a defense that, in theory, could slow New England down.
Yeah. Like you said, in theory. I think what it takes, though, is it's going to take one of those. It's either going to take one of those Denver defenses, again, like I said, which those teams do not have, or it is going to take maybe, a matchup situation. I think Baltimore is a good matchup team. Anytime Baltimore has gone up to New England with Joe Flacco over the years, they have come to play. They have won games in the playoffs at Foxborough, so they're a good matchup. I actually give Baltimore a better chance to beat the Patriots than the Steelers if they play in the postseason.
I mean, Pittsburgh, as of right now, my power ratings don't have Pittsburgh as a playoff team, and the record doesn't have Pittsburgh as a playoff team, even though they're at the top of that division. Let's see what the Steelers do this week. This is a big game for Pittsburgh. If Pittsburgh's going to show up and take care of business against Cleveland in a real way, that's going to make me a lot more bullish on the Steelers than I am right now. I just don't look at Pittsburgh as being a team that's even in the discussion.
Yeah, Pittsburgh's
for Super Bowl contention right now.
Yeah, they got to get on a roll. They got to start beating teams the way they're supposed to beat teams instead of just barely beating teams. It's nice to get a win, and they needed it, and they're 3-1 in their last 4. It's interesting that they're 6-0-1 straight up last 7 versus Cleveland. But they're 0-3-1 against the spread the last 4, with the 4 decided by 4 points or less.
Well, it speaks volumes about the fact that that the Browns find ways to lose close games.
That's true.
They spent several years doing that in the it's the last 2 years.
Yeah,
they've been losing. The first year under Hugh Jackson, they weren't even close.
And as far as Baltimore and Cincinnati, Cincinnati's injuries right now are going to wind up hurting them if they don't get some of these guys back. It started with Eifert. They got a lot of little injuries. That's not going to help their cause. They have a big game, too, just like Pittsburgh. They do. They can't afford to stumble with Tampa Bay at home this week. And for Baltimore, I still think there's a worry in Baltimore about whether or not in a big game situation, and we saw it against the Saints last week, whether they can close the deal, and they couldn't do it again last week. That's an issue.
I'm not buying that. Come on. I mean, you had a kicker that made 222 extra points in a row, and he missed a kick.
No, I'm not talking about that.
Missed the extra point.
I'm talking about being up. No. 17-7.
That's one of those random freak occurrences that happens to the kicker.
I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being up 17-7 late in the third quarter. Your defense is this awesome defense. And I'm saying this because I've talked to Baltimore people. This is what they feared the most. And I didn't talk to them after the game. This is before the Saints game. This is before the season. This is what they fear the most. We saw it against the Bengals last year at the end of the season. They're having a hard time closing games out when they've got leads that will either get them to the playoffs or, win big games like last week. And they screwed it up again, up 10 points against the Saints.
Yeah, I didn't downgrade my power rating on Baltimore after that game, one iota. It's very hard to shut down Drew Brees for 4 quarters. They shut him down for 3. They gave up a couple of TDs in the 4th. That's not in my mind. And they lost on a missed extra point. Those aren't the type of things that have me downgrading a team. And certainly when we talk about Baltimore off a loss in the Harbaugh era, and the fact that Cam Newton hasn't been practicing all week, Ravens might be worth a look on Sunday.
I'm actually. Are you surprised they're a 2-point road favorite at Carolina, with Carolina at 4-2, coming off a win at Philly?
No, I'm not surprised at all. Being that and again, the mainstream narrative off of the Panthers' win against Philly last week was, wow, look at Cam Newton in the 4th quarter. He stepped up with the game on the line. If you watch the game, you know how many in the 4th quarter, how many open receivers Cam Newton missed. He's not right. He didn't throw for the public part of practice today on Thursday. And Carolina got the win, but they got it in spite of themselves and largely due to coverage breakdowns for Philadelphia. I mean, the 4th and 10 pass that Newton completed, where he should have been sacked and the game should have been over, the receiver couldn't have been more wide open than he was. And Newton, he hit a couple of throws when it mattered, but the markets aren't. They don't think Carolina's right, and I don't disagree with that.
And look, I still think right now I would go with, again, this is just based on Baltimore being, this is always the way it is too anyway when you have a really close divisional situation like the AFC North, is that it's always going to be decided by injuries or, who wins the close games and such. So right now I still, at this point in time, I would go with Baltimore to find a way to win this division.
Yeah, I wouldn't argue with that at all. And again, when you look at point differential, which when you talk about Pythagorean theory and where teams are supposed to be versus where they actually are, the Ravens' point differential of plus 75 is only 3 points less than Kansas City, 7-0 Kansas City at plus 78. I believe that's the 3rd highest in the NFL. The Rams lead the league in point differential. So that's a stat the markets take very seriously.
In the South, as you mentioned, Houston coming off their biggest win of the season, especially in a matchup nightmare scenario with their offensive line against the Jags' defensive line. But fact is, Jacksonville's offense is a joke at this point in time. So they go out, they get Carlos Hyde, which was a smart move, something they should have done about a year or two ago, get a competent number 2 power back to go along with Leonard Fournette. Not sure what that's going to do in this week's game in London against Philly. Still not sure what to think about Philly after the collapse last week, but I know there's some talk about Jags got the edge because of London and their experience there, but I'm not worried about that if I'm an Eagle fan. Eagles are just a better football team right now. I mean, I'm going to be surprised if Jacksonville just all of a sudden in just one game, Blake Bortles comes out and has a great game. He's been known to do it, but I haven't seen them in this much of a slide in a long time. I don't think it's going to happen that quickly.
No, things felt really broken last week for Jacksonville. And the fact that Blake Bortles getting trotted out there again, this team did nothing to address. You talk about they should have gotten a backup running. Yeldon's been fine. He caught another touchdown pass last week. Great catch. It's not running back that they have a problem, even without Fournette. This team could have made a decision to go for Teddy Bridgewater. They chose not to, and meanwhile he's on the Saints bench. They could have. There's other choices they could have right now. If they wanted a reasonable backup, but they didn't address the backup QB situation. They didn't put money in the backup QB situation, and this is what you get now. The Blake Bortles we saw against the Patriots, the confident downfield thrower, that guy's a month in the rearview mirror. The receiving corps is banged up, the offensive line is banged up, the running game isn't there, and the defense isn't playing the way they were. So, no, I don't look at Jazz. The last week's loss for the Jazz to me was a difference maker in terms of my opinion on Jacksonville and my powering number on Jacksonville and all of that. Because that was their spot, and that was their matchup, and they didn't show up. Mm-hmm. And they didn't show up right from the opening kickoff where Bortles took the first play of the game and fumbled it away. and the team was done right there, and then you could see it. I don't like teams that quit at first play at home, literally, where you can see the difference in energy off of one bad play in the first quarter, and boom, that's a problem. So who's live in this division? Certainly Houston from a personnel standpoint.
Sure.
We talk about those receivers. They're making plays every week. The catch Hopkins had last week, where I'm like, oh, that's incomplete. He threw a 10-yard. Oh, my God, Hopkins caught that. That was the 3rd and 9 that set up a Texans score. And the fact that they've got, a pass rush that's pretty devastating on both sides with Clowney and Watt. Just, they owned the game last week. Houston is a scary squad at the top. But from a value standpoint, the last place team is the Indianapolis Colts. They're 2-5. They just got a win last week against a bottom here. Oh, Indy's no good. Whatever. They just beat Buffalo. No. Something different happened in that game. They got Marlon Mack back at running back. Back-to-back big games. He missed the first month of the season. And when they can run the football, they can throw the football. You want to take a flyer in the AFC South? Indy would be the team I would look at.
Well, yeah, they lost some close games earlier without Hilton, without Doyle, without Mack, and several. Costanzo just came back a couple of weeks ago. So if there's going to be a division a situation where a team that right now is in last place that can make a serious move for first, I would agree. It would be the AFC South. That is definitely possible because we're still not sure about Houston. And I don't even know what to think about Tennessee either, because maybe the bye week gives them a little bit more time for that offense to get going. LaFleur, first-year offensive coordinator, he's a talented coordinator, talented coach coming from Shanahan and McVay, but it's going to take some time. So maybe after the bye, things start clicking because they played good on defense and they didn't get what they needed just before the bye, which was that 2-point conversion. But they came close, so maybe it's going to wind up being a good step in the right direction. They could be very dangerous second half.
No, Mariota. Look, Marcus Mariota is who he is. Jameis Winston was better than him. That's why Mariota got drafted second.
So you've given up on Mariota. You think he's that's it. You've seen enough of him. He's never going to amount to anything.
I do not think that Marcus Mariota with the Titans' offensive line and receiving core this season is a as good as a division winner. I'm not saying he's never going to do anything. I'm saying right now, at best, Mariota's the 3rd best QB in the division, and that's not going to get it done.
All right. Well, if he was last with Bortles in there, he'd be in serious trouble. Let's go to the West and Chiefs and Chargers. So, what kind of a chance do you give the Chargers, knowing that they just can't even beat the Chiefs head to head? What kind of a chance do you give the Chargers to win this division?
A reasonable chance. I would say, in the 3-1 range, 4-1 range. I mean, KC, for as good as they've been, let's not forget, they still have the Rams on their schedule, the Ravens on their schedule, the Chargers on their schedule, a trip to Seattle up. They've got multiple they go to Cleveland next week off this divisional game against Denver. They've got some hiccup games ahead. KC's not going to finish this season and win every contest, but I put my Chiefs futures in my pocket before the season started, and I bet everything. That was I got them over their season wins. I got them to win the division, all that, and all those odds obviously are long gone. Now, at the current price point, I can only look at the Chargers as a reasonable dog price, because if they can beat KC at Arrowhead in December, that takes the 2-game lead with the tiebreaker and spins it in LA's favor. So it might be worth a flyer as a long shot to win the AFC West. Well,
the Chargers, the thing, too, that is going to be really big for them is getting Bosa back. So they get Bosa back, and hopefully nothing is seriously wrong with Melvin Gordon. He doesn't get anything that winds up lingering. Those hamstrings are always tricky. You keep Gordon healthy. You get Bosa back. And the Chargers are, without a doubt, a playoff team. Now the question is whether or not they could finally beat the Chiefs. I don't think they've done that in 3 or 4 years, something like that.
Yeah, it's been, I think, at least 5 meetings in a row. Maybe it was 5 before the first one.
And not only have the Chiefs dominated against the Chargers, but they've dominated against Denver. They've got all the trends working for them this week that it scares me it's too easy. 6-0 straight up and against the spread last 6 versus Denver. They are 7-0 against the spread this year, And Vance Joseph is 0-6 straight up and against the spread as a road dog since taking over last year. So all of that scares the hell out of me because it seems too easy.
Well, I mean, when you're talking about laying double digits in a divisional game in the NFL, it's never too easy.
That is true.
That being said, you remember the first meeting between these two teams. Rare that we see the rematch of a divisional foe this early in the season. But in that first meeting, Denver did everything right. Everything right in that game. Didn't matter. By the fourth quarter, Mahomes had figured it out and was making big plays. And, I worry for Denver backers that, guess what? We did this. And that road track record is very, very real for the Broncos. They've won 2 road games in the entirety of the Vance Joseph era, and both came against bottom feeders.
Yep. All right. And as far as if we look at New England and Kansas City and the Chargers, they would probably be the more likely 3 playoff teams in the AFC. So that leaves Miami, Cincinnati, Baltimore, maybe the whole AFC South. I'm not sure about Denver. They'd have to beat Kansas City to change my mind about them. Who would be your sleeper right now in the AFC playoff race? Indy, okay. Let's go to
Indy's a team that's out of the mix right now that has a chance.
Okay. Let's go to
their schedule is fairly friendly as well.
All right. Well, and they're only a 3-point favorite against the Raiders, who are, they're trading everybody. So this would be a good week for Indy to make sure that they continue to stay relevant in the AFC South. Let's go to the NFC, and believe it or not, the Washington Redskins are in first place, game and a half up on the Eagles and the Cowboys. Cowboys bring in Amari Cooper, and that was a big story this week, of course. Giants are done. It's just a matter of time before Kyle Lauletta takes over there. So Redskins, will they hold on in the NFC East?
I wouldn't count on it. I'm not saying that Washington's not, Washington is a solid, mediocre team. They are everything we thought they were coming to the season. They're 8-8, 9-7. They go 9-7. They could win the division this year.
True.
Because the Giants are just stick a fork in them, done.
Yep.
Dallas, that loss to Washington last week, it's not a season ender, but the panic trade for Cooper, how many other I'm just curious, in your opinion, how many other teams could they say, hey, give us your underachieving receiver and we'll give you a first rounder?
Yeah, no, that was just ridiculous.
Every team in the league would have taken that deal. And that's the type of deal that, when you have your owner trying to play GM that they end up with. And
I think the Raiders would have accepted a second rounder.
Which means that if someone's going to beat Washington, it's going to be the Eagles.
Sure. Yeah.
And talent-wise, Philly should be able to be just fine. I'm worried about their secondary. But the brain trust, don't make no mistake about it, all right? If the Eagles have Frank Reich as their offensive coordinator and John DeFilippo as their QB coach, they score more than 17 points last week and they win that game against Carolina, and they move the football in the fourth quarter when they had to. But, you have Reich leaving town, you have DeFilippo leaving town, and the brain trust isn't there. Doug Peterson's still Doug Peterson, but it wasn't his smarts that got Philly the Super Bowl title last year with his assistants. They missed those assistants, and, of course, their secondary has been dismal. So for as much as I think the Eagles are still the team to beat in that division, Washington, maybe. It's not a division that anything close to being a favorite or anywhere where I'm like, okay, I'm excited about the odds on this team right now. There's nothing in the NFC East for me right now.
In the North, Minnesota's got a half-game lead over Green Bay. Chicago, Detroit, also 3-3. This could be the best division in the NFL right now. And Vikings got the big game against the Saints on Sunday Night Football. Saints have added Eli Apple. I'm not sure what that's going to do. But anyway, they've won 5 straight. They've covered 4 straight overall. The Vikings have won 3 straight. They're 3-0-1 against the spread in their last 4. It's a rematch of the playoff game. Saints have revenge on their minds. Vikings are favored by 1. They may get Everson Griffin back. That would be good. But no Dalvin Cook. He's out again. Vikings haven't played particularly well at home so far this year. But they also haven't been motivated enough yet, so I'm willing to excuse that. I don't know. Saints are playing. I still think the Saints are playing a little bit better. They're a little bit more healthier as well, and they've got revenge. I think I'm leaning towards the Saints in this one.
Yeah, certainly from a divisional standpoint, I don't think there's any question that the NFC North is the best division in football.
Okay.
Because there are no bad teams. There's no easy wins.
Nope.
And every other division in the NFL, I mean, maybe the AFC North, because Cleveland's not going down easy, but every other division has at least one team that everyone else is going to beat up on. Maybe not the NFC South, where Atlanta's showing viability despite the injuries. But that's why this division, the thing that makes it a division elite is that there's no bottom feeders, and this division certainly doesn't have one. Minnesota, back-to-back weeks, they've played really good defense, but of course, who they face back-to-back weeks?
Sure.
Well, they had a rookie quarterback in Josh Rosen, they had a rookie quarterback in Sam Darnold. Drew Brees is not a rookie quarterback.
Nope.
That being said, you talk about the guys being back and the guys being out. Everson Griffin matters for that. Dalvin Cook doesn't matter. Come on. Dalvin Cook, their running back. He's a running back who was highly drafted and has never done anything in the NFL. Meaningless to Minnesota's success. Everson Griffin's not meaningless to Minnesota's success, and as we've seen that defense improve the last couple of weeks, getting a playmaker like Griffin back, and they don't know how much they're going to get out of him this week. There was some questions about whether he was mentally ready to rejoin the team and all of that, but if he's on the field, he's an impact player, and the Saints escaped with one last week, rallying from behind. I know they had the playoff revenge, but right now, Minnesota may well be the better of these two teams, and the markets aren't necessarily pricing them that way. With this number sitting pretty close to pick 'em as we talk here on Thursday.
Yeah, the thing with Cook and Murray is that the Vikings will be a playoff team and can also compete for a potential Super Bowl without Dalvin Cook, but they'll stand a better chance to beat the better teams in the postseason if they have a running game. Because
You honestly think there's any difference between the handoff to Latavius Murphy versus the handoff to Dalvin Cook?
Yes. Latavius Murray is nothing. Latavius Murray only runs because everybody's concerned about Kirk Cousins throwing the football.
You understand that Murray's averaging 4.8 yards per carry, has 5 rushes to 20 yards or more, and has 3 touchdowns. Dalvin Cook is averaging 2.7 yards per carry. He doesn't have a run longer than 15 yards this season, has no touchdowns.
Well, first of all, I'm not saying that I'm 100% sold that Dalvin Cook is going to return and be healthy this season. I'm just trying to say if Dalvin Cook is part of this offense, that he's got the game-breaking ability and special talent that Latavius Murray doesn't have. And most of those stats came in the last 2 weeks against one of the worst rushing defenses in football in Arizona, and the Jets gave up a couple of big plays, and that was it. So Latavius Murray's a plotter. It's all he is. He's a product of the system. Cook is a difference maker, but he's got to be healthy. So can the Vikings win the Super Bowl with Latavius Murray? Yes. Could they win it a little easier with Dalvin Cook? I believe yes, but he's got to be healthy, and he's got to prove it, and I see where you're coming from because he hasn't been that guy.
This is the question, and I appreciate your point, and you make an excellent point there, but this is my question. Which player has more impact on Minnesota's fortunes moving forward? Dalvin Cook or Everson Griffin? I'll say Griffin in a minute, in a New York minute.
That's a close one. I think that's a close one. I mean, I would say based on what we've seen so far since Cook's been in the league, I'd agree with you because Cook hasn't yet, besides playing for several games in his first year, hasn't proven it yet. So Griffin has. So I'd agree with that. I'm going on projection. You're going on history, facts. So I agree with that. So, But look, that's the reason they went after Cook anyway. They went after Cook because they know that they've got to be a little bit more that's why they went after Cousins. They know they got to be more explosive offensively, and a Cousins-Cook combination will do that for them. But again, yes, look, they went to the championship game. They lost to a red-hot Eagle team. Why can't they go back to the championship game and win it this time, even without Dalvin Cook? It could happen, especially now that you have Cousins instead of Case Keenum.
Sure, and when you look at we had a big debate in the AFC about, who can challenge New England and Kansas City and who's the third best team and all that. NFC is deeper when it comes to the quality teams. Minnesota only one of a number, and obviously that's reflected in the point spread this week with that spread at pick 'em or -1. against a New Orleans team that is absolutely on everyone's short list right now of Super Bowl contenders.
By the way, good game, Detroit-Seattle, because both of those teams are quietly playoff contenders, with Seattle winning 3 out of 4. They've only lost 2 points to the Rams. And Detroit, trading for Damon Harrison to help up that rush defense, they've won 3 out of 4, and they've covered 5 straight games. So that's a good game.
And the Lions have the most, you talk about the modern NFL. What are you scared of? You're scared of elite receiving corps. Lions have the best group of receivers in the NFC North, and a QB who's finding a way to put the ball into their hands, and a running game that they haven't had in recent years. So, again, you're looking for flyers. You're looking for some long shots. Detroit is a team that I've been steadily upgrading in my power ratings week after week.
Yep.
And not a team I'm sleeping on right now.
No. Matter of fact, the Dallas game kind of stunted my enthusiasm with them because I was really starting to get behind them. Then they lost the Dallas game, and I was like, oh, come on now. Really? Seriously? Back to being the old Detroit. But now they're, again, the big win last week. Kerryon Johnson is giving them a dimension that Matthew Stafford hasn't had before. They still have some things to clean up, but getting Ziggy Ansah healthy and trading for Damon Harrison could be huge for them moving forward. By the way, give Packers a chance, a legit chance to beat the Rams.
No.
I agree.
I don't think the Packers, again, when we talk about the team in the division, and my numbers have Green Bay fairly high. I don't know that the Packers don't end up being the Bears are good and the Lions are good and the Vikings are good. I'll just put it that way. Green Bay's got their work cut out for them if they're going to be a playoff team this year.
Yeah, I thought their defense would be better. I'm surprised they are a better defense. I know they lost Wilkerson but that's still they have a couple guys out, but I thought they'd still be better. But the problem is Mike McCarthy's not going away anytime soon, and as long as he's there, then you've got the whole reason why I can't get behind them. Let's go to the South, and the Saints are definitely in control, even though they're only up by a game, but they're the best team. Carolina's just too inconsistent. Atlanta's got too many injuries. The Bucs are a joke. Their cutter will be fired any day now. The longer they win a few games, he'll last the season, then get fired. But anyway, looking like the Saints now, it's all about the Super Bowl, and they've got the defense, and they've done a great job in bringing guys in there and moving up in the draft for Davenport and even trading for some depth with Eli Apple. And so the Saints are a legitimate championship team. The question is, if they play the Rams in L.A., will that matter?
Maybe. And I mean, when you talk about postseason success, the Saints have been there, done that. Rams not so much.
That's right.
I would give, in some regards, New Orleans some credence in that type of situation. But when you look at the rest of this division, and this division was supposed to be among the best, if not the best, in the NFL coming into the season, based on season win numbers, the Falcons are a shell of the team that they were.
Yeah.
But that being said, they may get healthier as the season progresses. I wouldn't be surprised at all to see Atlanta go on some kind of a run. Matt Ryan, very quietly, is putting up Drew Brees numbers every week.
Yeah, and he's getting
Tampa has
help.
no defense. Carolina's got a whole bunch of issues right now. So I think it is the Saints' division to win. And, the markets have priced them accordingly.
Yeah, I don't know if I still believe if the Rams play a certain team like the Saints in the postseason, I don't care where the game is played, they play a team like that, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to be taking the Rams because there's still these players on this Ram team that I am not sure are championship football players.
The Rams are pretty good, though.
Oh, they're very good. But in the postseason, in a game where they're supposed to win, I don't know about that. If they play the right team.
I'll take McVay over Peyton.
What's that? Oh, as far as a coach?
Yeah.
I'm not, I'll tell you the truth, I'm not worried about that. I mean, I'm okay with that, you saying that. I'm looking at more of, like I said, I would look at it more of, I would take Breeze over Goff at this point in a postseason game. And like I said, I just think, I don't want to rely on Ndamukong Suh and a couple other, and Brandon Cooks, and they better get Cooper Kupp back. They better get him back and healthy because this team will not win a Super Bowl without Cooper Kupp in the postseason.
Did you see Aaron Donald last week?
Oh, yeah, he's an animal. Yeah.
Aaron Donald is the most dominant defensive lineman in the NFL, and that that goes a long way.
Yeah, Cam Jordan's not far behind. He's pretty good too, but Darnold's better. All right, let's go to the West and wrap it up. And the Rams, as we said, they're the class. So the question is, what kind of a chance do you give Seattle to make the postseason?
Yeah, and that really is the only question here. And when we look at the other playoff contenders, all right, we got Washington, Philly. We got everybody in the NFC North. That's 6.
Uh-huh.
We have the Saints at 7 and maybe Carolina at 8 and the Rams at 9. And, I'd probably rank Seattle 10. I understand. I mean, right now, let's put it this way. My Seahawks power rating is the same as my Cowboys power rating.
Yeah, that's not good.
And who they beaten? They beat Dallas at home. They barely beat Arizona. And they beat the Raiders.
Yeah, they've got to win this week to prove that they are a legit playoff contender.
Yes, but even after that, they got at the Lions this week, the Chargers next week. They'll be home dogs in that game.
There you go.
At the Rams the week after that. Then the Packers. Then at the Panthers.
Wow.
They still have the Vikings before the season's done.
That's a lot.
No, Seattle's not a playoff team. Not this year.
Yeah. Then they better win this week if they're going to have a chance. That's for sure.
And I wouldn't bet on them to win this week. Detroit's good.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with it. I would probably lean towards Detroit as well. All right. Sounds good, Ted. I appreciate it. Best of luck watching the games. There's also a lot of good Thursday and Friday games this week, so that's good. I mean, there's always a lot of games, but at least this week there's actually games that I would actually watch if I didn't put a bet on it. So,
sure, but that's what Thursday and Friday. I mean, I love to watch the Thursday and Friday single event games because you get a chance to focus on teams that you don't necessarily focus. On a college football Saturday when I got 6 games on at once, I'm not always paying attention to the Sun Belt and the MAC.
I know.
And in the Thursday and Friday night games, you get an opportunity to see some of the smaller conference schools, and so you get so much visually from seeing a team play that you just don't get from reading about them or looking at box scores.
All right. Well, either way, enjoy it. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Ted. All right, Ted Sevransky. And you can find all of Teddy's guaranteed picks at experts.covers.com. You can also follow him on Twitter at Teddy_covers. So, yeah, you got the Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech game tonight. You have maybe the best team in the MAC playing tonight, Western Michigan, against a good opponent. You have the top 2 of the top 3 teams in the Sun Belt playing tonight, Appalachian State, Georgia Southern. Tomorrow, and you also have West Virginia playing Baylor tonight. Tomorrow, you have Utah, UCLA in the Pac-12 is actually a pretty big game. And you've also got the BC Miami game. So there's some really, and of course the NFL, Houston and Miami. So there's a lot going on in football the next couple of days, so that's a good thing. And we'll be talking all about those college football games on College Football Weekly with Mitch Light. That's coming up a little bit later on today on a Thursday. Anthony Dasher will be my special guest, will be our special guest. And again, it's a little bit later on with Mitch Light from Athlon Sports, managing editor of UGAsports.com. Anthony Dasher will be our guest as we will preview the old cocktail party contest between Florida and Georgia. So that'll be a big one, and we'll go through all the other conferences in college football as well, sort of like what we just did today in the NFL on this show. We'll update all the key injuries, and we'll give our picks as well, including our double-digit outright upsets, fresh off of taking Purdue last week. Purdue, my double-digit upset play last week to win outright, and was actually Mitch's 3-star pick last week. So we both liked Purdue, and that really said more about Ohio State going into that game. We both did not like the way that they were playing in the preceding weeks, and sure enough, they got caught. And so Michigan now atop the Big Ten rankings, and we'll talk more about that on the College Football Weekly show. Coming up in a little bit will be Bill Huber at the bottom of the hour, publisher of Packer Report, as we talk more about the Packers and their game against the undefeated Rams. All right, let's talk some fantasy football. Normally we talk fantasy football on Tuesdays, and it's a free agency kind of day. But now we're into Thursday, so because of the schedule change this week, we are going to now talk a little bit more about players that you should be keeping an eye on to start or sit as far as your rosters are concerned. Let's welcome in Scott Engel, the managing director of RotoExperts.com. Scott, good to talk to you again.
Always good to talk to you. Ready for Week 8. My lineup ranks are up on rotoexperts.com this week, and ready to go.
All right. So tell me a little bit about lineup ranks. What exactly do fantasy owners get out of that?
Pretty much, who you should start and who you should sit for week 8. If you got a tough question, I make the call for you.
All right. Well, I know there now, and especially now with things that are going on, being the bye weeks, it's a lot more difficult to make these decisions because sometimes you're going with players. For instance, in my league, I just happen to have like half of my bench is off this week, and then I have like 2 or 3 other guys that are banged up, including Cooper Kupp, who's not playing. So I'm like in one of those modes where I'm like saying, okay, who am I going to start this week? Mike Davis or Marquise Goodwin? So I'm like, okay, where do I go here? So there are a lot of those decisions going on this week and the next few weeks with the bye weeks, especially when you got a lot of teams out taking the week off, and that's what's happening this week. So what do you think about? Let's talk about. I want to go over. And again, all of these, unless you have your own team examples of questions that you're going over, I'm just going to go over some possibilities that fans, and again, whether it's an actual possibility out there or whether it's just talking about specific players. Deshaun Watson is one. Mitch Trubisky.
Before we go ahead, though, sorry to interrupt you, though. You want me to answer that Mike Davis, Marquise Goodwin question?
You can do that. I mean, I'm not right now. I'm not going to. I don't wait. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I might actually. You know what it is? It's actually between Davis, Goodwin, and Geronimo Allison. Those are the 3 guys. Yeah. One of those guys I have to start.
I'd probably lean towards Goodwin now because if Randall Cobb is coming back, Allison's role may not be what we expect to. And with Davis, he's part of like a three-way committee there. Timeshares two people really. The main committee is 3. That's semantics. But with Davis, you never know what's going to happen. Look, the run defense for Detroit has been bad all year, but they just acquired Snacks Harrison, so they're looking to improve that. And you never know. I think Davis is their number 1 goal line option, but I wouldn't be surprised if they pop Rashad Penny in there at all. So I don't think you rely on it. Goodwin was down last week, and they might try to get him the ball this week because of that. Because I believe he is their top pass catcher. And I think there's going to be some points to be scored in San Francisco, Arizona.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I guess the one thing I was a little bit concerned with was, and again, I would find out a little bit more now that I know Peterson ain't going anywhere, concerned whether or not Peterson is going to stay glued to Goodwin or whether or not Peterson is going to stick to his side of the field. So that's why, again, I haven't really done enough of research on that to make that decision, whether or not that's something I should even worry about, because Goodwin is the type of player that it only takes one shot down the field for 30, 40 yards and a touchdown, and I got exactly what I want for the week from Marquise Goodwin, whereas Mike Davis, as you said, needs to get those goal line touches because he's going to share it with 2 other running backs. And then, of course, you've got Allison, like you said, who I was kind of thinking about now that he's going to play. I was like, Aaron Rodgers. The Ram game is probably going to be high scoring. But then again, there is going to be a lot of receivers to share from, including the rookie, the Scantling kid, who I hear is also banged up, isn't he? Isn't he kind of banged up too? Valdez Scantling?
Yeah, but I really don't think he's going to be in the mix at all this week. So... he's really not a consideration.
All right, well, then that would make it easier for Allison. So anyway, what about so I was looking at some of the quarterback situations this week, just taking a look overall at how the numbers are, and I figured I'd throw this one at you, and that's Deshaun Watson, who's playing tonight. Hasn't had the biggest numbers the last couple of weeks, even though they've won, but we don't care about that. We're playing fantasy here. He is at home, and you know what? Don't care about that because that really hasn't mattered. But they're going up against a Dolphin defense that is the strength of their team, and that could be an issue. So let's compare Deshaun Watson to Mitch Trubisky, who will go up against the Jets defense, who has all sorts of injuries in the secondary. So that Chicago's at home. I think normally, well, look, obviously when you're drafting at the beginning of the season, everybody's taking Deshaun Watson. So I don't think anybody would have thought, okay, I'm going to go to Mitch Trubisky at any point over Deshaun Watson early in the season. But the way things are going right now, wouldn't that be a tougher decision this week?
I don't think it's a tough decision at all. I don't think what the matchup is at all has me have any confidence in Deshaun Watson. With his health, he can get knocked out of a game at any time. And also, he's not running, so he becomes a mediocre fantasy quarterback. He's number 18 in my quarterback ranks on RotoExperts.com this week, whereas Mitch Trubisky, who's played 3 terrific games and is facing a Jet secondary that's really banged up, is number 9 overall. So for me, it's no comparison.
All right. Yeah, I actually made the switch last week to Phillip Rivers for the first time, and it sure was the obvious decision with the way Watson, because I agree. I mean, I'm just going to go with Phillip Rivers the rest of the way, but he's on the bye this week, so I've got to start Deshaun Watson, which is not. It's not. I don't feel bad about starting Deshaun Watson for another week. But yeah, it just shows you that things can change, especially at the quarterback spot, even at this point in the season, for Mitch Trubisky to now be a lock in your mind over Deshaun Watson as far as the choice is concerned. All right, let's go to running backs. And who would have thought that Marcus Murphy and Kenjon Barner could be getting serious touches on Monday Night Football for the Patriots and the Bills? But that's possible depending on the status of McCoy and Ivory for the Bills, and then with the Patriots and Sony Michel looking like he's out, and the other running backs that are out for the year. Now they still have James White, so there'll be some other running backs for touches with the Patriots. But is this a tough decision when you're thinking about Kenjon Barner and Marcus Murphy, if you happen to both have them on your roster for whatever reason, and you can wait till Monday night and just make the decision?
Well, here's the thing: if you're trying to decide between Kenjon Barner and Marcus Murphy, you're super desperate right now, and I don't think Marcus Murphy's going to be a factor regardless, even if LaShawn McCoy is out. Now, with LaShawn McCoy, he's back to practice, but he hasn't been cleared. But there's speculation that I'm seeing that he should be cleared in time for Monday.
Okay.
Now, that's anything but certain because you can never predict how a guy heals. But even if he's out, I can't see Marcus Murphy having any kind of significant role to the level where he's useful in a fantasy league. And if you spent any money at all on Kenjon Barner this past week, outside of say maybe like $40 in the $1,000 budget, I think you wasted your money. It's not like Kenjon Barner, who's a journeyman scatback type, is going to step up and have any significant role more than being complimentary. So it's either James White or you really shouldn't use any Patriots running back.
Yeah, I think what probably would have caught owners' eyes would have been the fact that Barner did rush 10 times the previous week, but then you got to look at the fact that he only gained 30 yards. And I don't even know what the heck. I mean, this is one of the situations where it's like there aren't enough running backs out there in the NFL where you can't find anybody other than Kenjon Barner. So I don't know. I mean, I would have thought maybe a couple of years ago this would have been somebody to go at, but Kenjon Barner is up there in age too. Even though the Patriots are a product of their system. 29? He's up there. I just know he's been around for about 6 years, so he's probably right around 30.
I thought that too, and then I looked it up, and Kenjon Barner really hasn't been in the league all that long. I thought he was around for longer than I anticipated.
Was it 6 years?
I had the same reaction that you did. I think it's 6 years now, but he's only 28. And secondly, maybe I'm digressing here. To me, it's not about age with running backs. Like, people always used to talk in fantasy, too, about a 30-year-old running back that's where a guy goes down. To me, it's not age as much as workload because, if a guy doesn't play a lot until he's like age 28 or something like that, why is he gonna start falling off at 30? He doesn't have an internal clock that goes off. It's really about wear and tear. There's a lot of running backs. Like Tiki Barber was a guy who really didn't start playing full-time till late in his career, or heavy till late in his career. That's why he played so well after age 30. And then you have Clinton Portis, who was done by like age 28 because they overworked him.
All right. Well, we'll find out whether or not Ken John Barner gets snaps for the Patriots. Maybe he'll get him in the second half. Maybe they'll hand off the ball to him 20 times when the Patriots are up 30-0.
He's 5'9", 195, so I can't expect a lot from him.
No, I'm just saying, when the Patriots are up 30-0 and all they want to do is run the ball in the second half, then maybe Ken John Barner will get a workload. All right.
Yeah.
What about Doug Martin now, who's going to be the number one running back? Jalen Richard has been more of a receiver, and you know what? I think Richard would have much better stats if he was in a better system. Like if he was on the Patriots, I think Richard would be a much better value. But the Raiders just haven't, even with Gruden, I don't think they're using him right because he's a good receiver out of the backfield. He's got speed, so maybe he'll get his opportunity soon enough. But Doug Martin is going to be the guy. So if I look at another player, a number two running back, and I want to compare, let's just say Tariq Cohen, number two running back on the Bears, and you've got Doug Martin, who's going to get starting carries on the Raiders. You still go with Tariq Cohen, right?
Yeah, unquestionably. Cohen has popped back up as a major threat and the number one threat from running back in this offense as the Bears have been resurgent over the last three games. Doug Martin is, yes, their number one running back, as the game starts out, and, they're in it. But as soon as they fall behind, he's going to get pulled for Jalen Richard when they're playing catch-up, and it's going to happen frequently, or when they're in third and longs and stuff like that. So Martin is number one on the depth chart, but Jalen Richard in a PPR format is definitely the number one running back fantasy-wise for the Raiders.
All right. So
I have him ranked number 21 this week on RotoExperts.com at running back. I have Martin at 29.
All right. So you're going to go Richard over Martin. And what about, sticking with the Raiders, who has more value, whether it's this week or in the coming weeks, unless the Raiders make changes at wide receiver? Would you trust Jordy Nelson more or Martavis Bryant if you just happen to have Either you're thinking of picking one of those two receivers up because you got to pluck a receiver in and they're available and you're deciding between one of the two, or you just have them both on your roster and you got to decide who to start. Who would you go with?
I would. It's tough. Trust is not a word that I would use for either guy. Jordy Nelson may have a floor, but what is that floor? And now that he gets more defensive attention with Amari Cooper out of town, I don't think it's a good thing for him. Martavis Bryant, can he step up and be that guy, in the starting lineup now? Can he take advantage of an opportunity? I always say opportunity doesn't always lead to production, but I'd rather take a chance on the upside of Bryant than go with Nelson. But trust is certainly not a word I would associate with either guy.
Now, what about some of the decisions you've had to make this week? Give me a couple of tough decisions you've had to make.
Tough decisions that I've had to make.
Yep. When you've had any that just
I really don't know if I have one this week or not, to be honest with you. There's nothing that I'm stewing about in my mind or going back and forth that I did last week. I own 10 teams, but I think maybe going over my lineup ranks, might be able to tell you better, here's some tough decisions that I face from users, but I think just the way things are working out, though, I think a lot of decisions are clear this week.
Okay.
Because everything changes in the NFL and fantasy football from week to week. Who thought that in Week 8 that we'd finally be giving Adrian Peterson the respect that in my ranks where I have him ranked as an RB1. Nobody thought that. For a good 6 weeks, we were all waiting for it to fall apart. But if you're trying to decide between Adrian Peterson and Nick Chubb, here's an example. It's I have Peterson actually ranked ahead. Now, Chubb is the younger, fresher running back, but Adrian Peterson has gone over 90 yards in 95 yards in 4 of his 6 starts. Only the third running back in NFL history to do that over age 33. And the Giants, without Harrison, are vulnerable. Meanwhile, Chubb faces Pittsburgh. So, there's one. And Latavius Murray versus Kerryon Johnson. Don't look now, but the Seahawks actually have the second-ranked defense in the NFL, and they get KJ Wright back this week. And Kerryon Johnson's the guy who's got to make the most of every touches. I think Latavius Murray definitely has better chances to get in the end zone than, say, than Kerryon Johnson.
Really?
Who's going to get vultured by, LeGarrette Blount there. Then going
That's
over
true.
to wide receiver, if you had to decide between, say, Emmanuel Sanders and Tyler Boyd, that's a tough one. But, when they're playing the Chiefs, I think you got to lead Emmanuel Sanders, but I like both of them a lot. And Tyler Lockett versus John Brown, that's another tough one there. But I think ultimately I might Lockett. I think is more dependable, but Brown has the better matchup, so I might lean towards Brown.
All right, sounds good. As far as rotoexperts.com, has anything particularly changed regarding your packages or anything like that from the beginning of the season to midseason?
No, we pretty much have the same consistent items every week, so people know what to expect. My lineup ranks come out today, and they're revised on Sunday morning. You can find Brandon Murchison's start sit today, as well as Chris Mitchell's trending and noteworthy, where he breaks down the numbers. So, and we got a 24/7 chat room, and don't forget to visit dailyroto.com. We've created 7 millionaires over there. Our lineup optimizer really helps people win money, and our NBA lineup optimizer is available as well now too.
Thanks, Scott. Enjoy the football. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right. Thanks a lot.
You got it. That's Scott Engel, rotoexperts.com. And again, normally on Tuesdays, and we go over top players to pick up off the waiver wire, but we had a schedule change this week, so that's the reason why Scott is on our Thursday show. So I would imagine he will return on Tuesday of next week. Meanwhile, Bill Huber is going to join us any minute now, publisher of Packer Report, as we go into the Packers and how their season's going so far, coming off the bye week, and the Packers taking on the undefeated L.A. Rams. Packers so far this season with wins over the Niners, the Bills, and don't forget that comeback win over the Bears week 1. They've lost to Detroit. They've lost to Washington by a combined 62-40. So that doesn't look very good, especially now that they got to go on the road again and face the L.A. Rams. Now, the most impressive game that they have played this season was the Minnesota game. And that was the game that went to overtime and ended up in a tie. By the way, the Rams spread is now up to 9.5. I mean, they are almost at double-digit spread against the Packers. I mean, they are just begging you to take Green Bay. And, I mean, when I think about that line, I'm sorry, but boy, Aaron Rodgers in a game like this, big game, all of that, it's going to be, it's even going to be hard for me to decide, maybe I'll just take the Rams and give 9 or 10. Man, that's a lot. But the Packers, Aaron Rodgers is one thing. Mike McCarthy is another, as I've said, and I'll talk to Bill about that, see exactly where he stands on McCarthy. But it's not that he's going anywhere this year. We'll find out whether or not the Packers, if they make the playoffs or not, where McCarthy goes, if anything happens to him. But the Packers are an underachieving football team and have been for a long time. One of the things that drives me crazy, speaking of fantasy, is the running back situation. It drives me nuts. I have Aaron Jones on my team, and I don't know why I'm okay with Jamal Williams. All right, I don't mind Jamal Williams getting touches. I like Jamal Williams. He's a good running back. But Aaron Jones is clearly the best running back on the team. Now, what he's not compared to Montgomery and Williams, from what I understand and what I've seen, he's one of those guys that you still have to worry about, say, in pass blocking or receiving. But just running the football, Aaron Jones is the best runner on this football team. And it's not even close. All you have to do is just take a look at the yards per average since Aaron Jones has been a Packer the past year and a half. He's the most explosive running back on the team. And if you didn't have veterans, like let's say you're one of these teams that didn't have any depth at running back, the Packers would be fine with Aaron Jones starting. Sure, they would have to worry a little bit about pass protection and receiving. But you know what also would happen? Aaron Jones would be out there, and he'd get more reps, and the more reps he would get, then you would hope the better he would get at being a pass protector, catching the ball out of the backfield and such, assignments, anything. But that's not the case. He has a bad play here or there, he comes out, and you don't see him again for a quarter. And that's why after the San Francisco game, I was like, you know what, I'm not putting him in the lineup anymore, at least not until I see that they are going to treat him the way he needs to be treated, like a number one running back, at least on this team. But, until that happens, I'm not going to do it. But I have to do it this week because I have everybody on bye. And I'm not going to start Mike. I'm not going to go with, say, remember I was going with Mike Davis and Allison and Goodwin. I'm not going to go with those guys over Aaron Jones. I mean, maybe I should. Maybe I should have asked Scott about it, or I'll check out his rankings, and I'll have. I don't even need to ask him on the air. I'll just check out his rankings where he has Aaron Jones. But Aaron Jones is somebody. Now, look, the Ram game. Maybe this is not a good spot for him either. And I'm not playing him because I want to play him. I'm playing because I have to play him. Again, I don't have to. I can go with the other guys, but he's the best player out of that group, so I should just stick with the best player. The only thing is if the Packers get behind early and they start throwing the football all over the place, like similar to what happened to them against Detroit a few weeks ago, then Aaron Jones ain't going to get many touches at all, which is probably what's going to happen. I mean, seriously, do any of us believe that the Packers are going to either defensively or because of Mike McCarthy and his expert strategic ability going to find a way to beat the Rams? I don't know. I mean, I doubt it. I think it's going to take the fact that Cooper Kupp is not playing. It's going to, something that I'm just not seeing that I haven't seen from the Packers. Again, I think they've been, pretty disappointing so far this season. And if they really want to prove that they're a legitimate Super Bowl contender, then you don't have to beat the Rams on Sunday. Just be competitive against the Rams on Sunday. And I know they have some injuries. Look, we talked about it before with Muhammad Wilkerson out, and you've got if you take a look at their defense. I know they lost Jake Ryan before the season began. He's a good part of their linebacking crew, but they did draft Owen Burks, in the third round. But Wilkerson was a big deal, but still, you still have Mike Daniels, Lowry, and Clark. So I don't think and Montavious Adams behind him. So I don't think that's a big deal. They've done so much as far as the secondary is concerned, and you take a look at it, and finally, you would think that they were going to be better. So I have to tell Bill to call. I don't know why. So anyway, so we'll talk about some of those things. Anyway, coming up later on College Football Weekly, that is going to be at live at about 5:00. Mitch Light's going to join me. Anthony Dasher is going to be our special guest. We're going to go into all the key college football games. We have injury updates. We got all the top trends to share for you. Of course, we'll give our picks of the week and all that. So that's coming up a little bit later on College Football Weekly with Mitch Light from Athlon Sports. So it's always a good show. We've got a lot of college football to talk about, and we're not just going to talk about the big conferences. We're going to go into the AAC. We're going to go into Conference USA. The Sun Belt's got a big game tonight, Georgia Southern, App State. So we're going to go into all the conferences and update you on everything that's going on. And that's coming up a little bit later on here on the Our Lads Football Network. So let's talk Packer football, and welcome back to the show. We've had him on before talking Green Bay Packers football. He is the publisher of the Packer Report. Bill Huber. Bill, thanks for taking the time to talk to us.
Happy to do it. How you doing?
Doing good, Bill. So this is a big week for the Packers coming off the bye. Tell me how are the fans taking the season so far?
Well, they're not taking it very well, as you might expect. A team that is looking. They've been championship contenders here for about 10 years now, and they're not taking it very well. Where it seems like at 3-2-1 in the meat of the schedule coming up, that these guys are not contenders anymore. We'll find out. The kind of the say here over the next 5 weeks. But yeah, the fans are, especially if they're a very good Brewer season, they are not thinking very highly of this team.
All right, and with the Brewer season over, more emphasis on the Packers and how they do, and they got to take on the Rams, the undefeated Rams. So they had some time off to prepare for the Rams, and then next week they go to New England on Sunday Night Football. So that's a hell of a 2-week stretch. This could really make or break their season. And it give the Packer fans some hope out there that they can actually even go 1-1 over these next 2 weeks. And why? What's it going to take?
If you look at some of the stats, this is a very good football team. One key stat I think is yard differential. That is what you'd expect is what are you doing on offense compared to what you're doing on defense. And you look at historically that the leaders of that stat are very good teams, and the teams that are at the bottom of that set are terrible teams. And Green Bay is third. They are moving the ball, and they've done a pretty good job of stopping their team from moving the ball. It's just all the other crap that's gotten in their way, whether it's drop passes or penalties or some turnovers or the untimely sack. If they can clean up the 5 or 10 bad plays a game, they'll be fine. The question is, can they clean up that stuff when you've got the Rams, who are number 4 in defense, whatever they are, and the Patriots are obviously good, and then get Miami after that, but then it's Minnesota and Seattle. Can you fix those things against really good defenses that you struggle with against defenses that are not really good?
Well, what's been the problem as far as the defense is concerned? Because we kind of thought that this was going to be the better, talent-wise on paper. This is going to be the best defense that the Packers are going to have in several years, especially since it appeared that they'd shored up the secondary with a lot more talent, especially from this past draft and bringing back Tramon Williams. But then you see what happened against San Francisco and a few other games, and it's like, okay, so what's going on here? Why is the defense not performing as well as we thought?
Yeah, well, they are better, but at the end of the day, they just have no pass rush.
Okay.
I realize that they rank fairly highly in sacks and sack percentage, but just on a play-to-play basis, if you're an opposing offensive coordinator, who do you care about? You don't care about Clay Matthews anymore. You don't care about Nick Perry. Their backups are Reggie Gilbert and Kyler Fackrell. Who do you care about? So yeah, I think it's just a bad pass rush, and it makes life difficult for the secondary. I think defense is better, actually.
Okay.
I think they are covering better. If you look at opponent pass rating, they were second to last in the league behind Cleveland last year, or ahead of Cleveland, I guess, however you want to look at it. This year they're at least middle of the pack in that stat, so they are doing some things better. Yards per attempt are doing pretty well. It's just at the end of the day, they're just no pass rush unless they can manufacture it through scheme, and that's really hard against really good teams.
All right. So you say so. Then let me ask you: does that mean that the Packers should cut ties with Clay Matthews at the end of the season?
Well, this is his last year on the contract, so
okay.
What's the market next offseason? I would assume it's probably not going to be a ton of money, so I would keep my options open there. He's still a good football player in some things. But as far as
you wouldn't break the bank. Yeah, you wouldn't break
rusher,
the bank for him. Correct. So,
No,
so if another team came along and offered him money, and the Packers they're not going to kill their bank, their salary cap to bring him back. But anything short of that, then okay, yeah. If you're going to meet us halfway, we'll bring it back. You're still a serviceable football player.
Yeah, I mean he tries hard, which is not something to be overlooked. I mean,
Sure.
He's extremely versatile. He was really good at inside linebacker a couple of years ago, and maybe ultimately, maybe you go back to that at some point.
Yep.
But he's just not a $12 million a year pass rusher.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I think fairly obvious.
And what about Perry? Because I know that Perry was a player that you kind of felt was coming on. I mean, he had 7 sacks. Okay, well, maybe there was hope that he'd be a double-digit sack guy. He was pretty decent against the run last year. So any particular reason why he hasn't really taken off, or is he just also a serviceable player and that's it?
Yeah, I think that's what it is. He had the great year in 16 when he had, I think, 11 sacks. He had 7 last year, but he only had I don't think he had any sacks over the last 6-7 games.
Okay.
He's a serviceable player, but they overpaid for him, and to keep him. I think it was 5 years and $59 million. So they could cut raises him in the offseason and actually save some money. I don't know if they want to go that route.
Sure.
But yeah, I mean you've got from a cap perspective, you've got a ton of money in those two guys, and you're just not getting anything out of them, you're not getting enough out of them.
Okay. And as far as the trade deadline, then, I know there's been a lot of talk about this player and that player, but in the past, the Packers generally, even in the offseason, they normally don't go too crazy with free agency. Now there is a new GM in town, so we'll find out whether anything happens here in the next week. But the Packers aren't going to mortgage any part of the future to bring in some sort of high-priced or even, star player that might not even be back after this season. That's just not going to be. That's not what they're doing, right? I mean, they're some of these rumors like Le'Veon Bell, none of that stuff's happening. I mean, is there any chance that they're going to bring in anybody that can really be a difference maker at the deadline?
Yeah, I think there's a chance at it. I mean, he's been, Brian Gutekunst was aggressive in free agency. Even after the draft, he brought in Byron Bell, who's been a pretty decent player. He brought in Mercedes Lewis at tight end. So, I mean, they've made some moves here. I don't know where his stance is on the draft. I know what that is. I don't know what his stance is on making trades. I've heard. This is just a rumor. I mean, who knows? Buffalo and Jerry Hughes, Arizona, and their pass rusher.
You're talking about. You're not talking about the Tony Jones, are you?
Yeah, I mean, if there's a pass rusher available, and there's some contract left over where you're not in danger of losing him in free agency, I would certainly explore. Because it's going to help you not just maybe make a push this year, but it's a starting point for next year to solve an awfully big weakness. So if there's a pass rusher, I'd be all in on that. Unless you're mortgaging the farm on somebody, but Jerry Hughes, I mean, he's been a double-digit sack guy for Buffalo. I would, if he really is available, I would kick the tires on that for sure.
Yeah,
because it is just an enormous weakness right now.
Yeah, and I meant to say Chandler Jones, but Chandler I looked at his contract, and because I've heard all those rumors about Arizona looking to possibly trade off Buchanan or Reddick, and Jones seems to have a pretty big contract, though. I don't know whether or not that would be such an easy deal to make, but fact is there are some of those players out there. I just don't know whether you can get any. How's the cap situation for the Packers? I mean, could they bring in a big contract?
Yeah, because next off after this coming off season, Matthews is off the books.
Okay,
Randall Cobb's off the books. Jordy Nelson's got dead money left over. That'll be gone. So yeah, they are looking at over the cap. They are 10th or 12th in available cap space for the upcoming season. So they're in pretty good shape. So
okay,
but you're right. Again, I have no idea what Chandler Jones' contract is, but can Atlanta swallow trading him with any bonus money he's got left over? Again, I have absolutely no idea. I've been so busy on the Rams, I haven't really explored the trade market and how all that stuff works out.
All right, and and then you hear about how the Packers, if they had a Le'Veon Bell type running back, and I only bring that up because I don't look at the Packers situation of running backs and think that that's a weakness on their football team. I just don't. I mean, I get why I've heard some of the things about Aaron Jones and, he needs to do this better, needs to be a better pass blocker, he needs to be a better pass receiver. But the guy is a dynamic rusher. And you throw in the fact that I think Jamal Williams is a fine player and Montgomery gives them options. I just don't look at – I think the offensive line needs more help than the running backs. I don't see what this infatuation with bringing in some superstar running back is going to do for the Green Bay Packers, especially when you, as you mentioned as well, they've got other needs, especially at pass rusher.
Yeah, I agree with you. Especially with Bell's contract situation being up in the air. Yeah, I wouldn't do that. Obviously, looks like Patrick Peterson's off the market now, but they don't need corners. They got plenty of corners.
Yeah.
To me, it's pass rusher or bust. I don't know what's out there for O-line wise, and I think most teams are fairly weak on the O-line anyway. So
that's true.
To me, if I'm the GM, it's pass rusher or I'm not picking up the phone.
And everybody wants those pass rushers, especially when you're running a 3-4 defense and you're looking for those outside linebackers. Not very easy to find. Okay, so what about Mike McCarthy? I know we talked about this before the season began, and again, things just haven't been getting much better. So any realistic chance that if the Packers don't make the playoffs that he would not return?
Yeah, I would think that's. If I had put down $5 on, I would say he will not return. He's under contract through next year, but they gave him the 1-year extension this past offseason, so he wouldn't be a lame duck coach. Do you want him to be a lame duck coach next year?
Sure.
I mean, there's a new GM, there's a new management structure here. And I just hope it goes noteworthy after the Buffalo game in Week 4, where the quarterback Aaron Rodgers criticized the plan at a press conference. He basically called out the head coach.
Yep.
The quarterback. As I keep saying, the quarterback has his contract, the coach does not, and I think all parties are well aware of that.
What about Aaron Rodgers and his health? Is he just going to be like this most of the season? He's not going to be 100%. That's just the way he's going to have to play. Do you think that there is? Do you think right now he should be playing? Is there anything that is going to jeopardize him as far as any major injury by him being out there? Like, in other words, would it be better for him to rest him for a week or two, or is this just going to be him? Whether they give him rest or not, he's got to play through this injury, and it's just time is the only thing that's going to get him better until the offseason, and then he can have some surgery.
Yeah, I mean, it is time, but look, they're 3-2-1.
Sure.
You're not throwing away weeks.
No.
Look, he's played well.
Oh yeah, sure.
It's not like he's a statue back there.
No,
he's averaging 6.5 yards a carry. If you didn't know he was hurt, you
wouldn't know it.
I think he was fine.
Yeah.
He's missed some practice time. I think that's impacted his accuracy. The protection hasn't been very good. So you look at his completion percentage, and it's pretty poor. He's got like 8 million throwaways. No, he's. Relatively speaking, he'll be fine. Is there a danger of hurting it worse? Sure, but I mean, there's a danger for any quarterback who's ever playing now that he's going to hurt. So, yeah, I think the risk reward there is pretty minimal. He wants to play. There's no reason for him to not play.
Yeah. Any other key injuries of guys that may or may not be able to play this week?
No. Well, I should have all hands on deck. They're actually going to have an active list on Sunday where there's healthy players on it. They'll be fine after the bye. Geronimo Allison and Randall Cobb, they practiced this week, and McCarthy felt like they're going to play. And the same thing with first round pick Jair Alexander, their cornerback. He'll play too.
Do you have before I let you go? Do you have a feel for this game at all yourself? Is that how you think?
I think they're going to get creamed.
Oh, really?
The Rams are terrific.
Oh yeah, sure.
They're 7-0. I mean, look, they're 7-0. They just swept a 3-game road trip. They're number 3 in scoring, 4th in points against.
Yeah,
they're loaded. They got a great football team, and they're feeling it. I just don't think the Packers can match up. I think the Rams are the far superior team to practically every team in the league. That's the Vikings.
All right, and any sort of if you had to gauge the hope or even just your analysis on whether or not this team is going to be able to make the playoffs and be a Super Bowl contender, More than likely, average, or less than likely?
I'd say less than likely. You got this game. You're at New England. You're home from Miami, but then it's at Seattle and at Minnesota. I mean, gosh, you have to somehow win. You know, if you go 2-3, you probably got a fighting chance at it. But if you beat Miami, you got to win one of those road games. And then you got to sweep the rest of them. Pal. That's tough sledding for a team that just it can't get out of its way at times.
Yeah. Yeah,
and the NFC is loaded, as everybody knows.
Yeah, well, look, I said this after I think it was the San Francisco game. I said, as a fan, because I've been down this road before, you always want to win the games. There's no question about it. But sometimes you say to yourself, you know what? I guess it would have been a good consolation is if we would have lost that game. Maybe that just would have made the decision a lot easier that we can just, again, for the people who are upset about McCarthy and if they want to blame him for a lot of the problems, then I got to believe that some of the fans are probably thinking about that in the back of their minds about, well, what if we go to the playoffs again and then we're 1-out? They're just going to bring back McCarthy again. I know Tennessee made a move when their coach went to the postseason. That doesn't happen very often. I just got to imagine it's kind of tough for a fan. Look, when you have Aaron Rodgers, a quarterback, you're trying to win a Super Bowl every year, and that's what you want first and foremost. But as a consolation, in case they don't get there, I think there are some fans that might be like, you know what, if we're not going to win a Super Bowl, then just don't even make the playoffs, and let's just kind of rebuild this thing with Aaron Rodgers before he gets too old.
Yeah, there's a lot of fans who think that way. Which is odd. It shows how spoiled people are around here. There's a lot of teams that would kill to get to the playoffs, and they've gone to the playoffs. I mean, they've gone 8 in a row until this thing on last year. They've got personnel issues. They had a bunch of bad drafts, and they're paying the price for it.
Bill, I appreciate it. Packer Report. So that's PackerReport.com.
That's right.
Excellent. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you again later on down the road.
Sounds good. Take care.
Thank you, Bill. All right, again, Bill Huber, publisher of Packer Report. So, look, I had Hondo Carpenter on a couple of weeks ago before the Penn State game, and he was giving all sorts of bad indications that it was going to possibly be an ugly game against Penn State. And they went out 1. So maybe, you think? Probably not. But I look, I'm real happy that the contributors that I have on this network are honest and not biased, and they just don't say glowing things. Now, some of them are. I can detect them too. Some of them are. Some of them will paint a rosy picture when they shouldn't be painting a rosy picture. But it's good to hear the contributors who are just going to say what they think. And those are the ones that are going to benefit the most in the long run, anyway, because those are the contributors where the fan base is going to trust more, and that's important nowadays with the media, not just in politics but in sports. The media. I mean, I've dealt with the sports media for many years, and I have to combat a lot of media that is biased or just ignorant. And when you find some of the media that is not biased and they have a good pulse of what's going on, not just with the team but with the fan base, that's a good thing. So that's a good contributor right there, Bill Huber from Packer Report. So Mike McCarthy's days are numbered at Green Bay. We all know that. And we'll find out whether or not the Packers have what it takes on Sunday against the Rams. I mean, right now, I'm kind of debating, but I say to myself, if I really, first of all, if I have to debate a game like really long, then I just don't take it. But I haven't really thought too long and hard about it because I really don't until today. I've always say this. I usually wait until after I talk to everybody on Thursday's show, and then I make my NFL picks. But if I was, let's put it this way, I wouldn't take the Packers, and that's more. The reason that I wouldn't take the Packers is for me personally, is because and again, this is if I'm going to take the Rams, is just because I'd have to say to myself, if I'm kind of debating back and forth, I always got to think about worst case scenarios in a pick. And that worst case scenario would be if I took the Packers and the Rams blew them out, what would be my reaction to that? My reaction to that would be, well, how stupid could you be to take the Packers and trust Mike McCarthy, especially after a bye? And by the way, I believe Mark Lawrence from Covers on the show on yesterday mentioned that McCarthy is something like 2-9 against the spread after a bye. So he ain't very good after a bye. So we'll see how that goes. So, yeah, for me, it's either take the Rams or stay away. Packers are 0-2 straight up and against the spread on the road. All right, that's going to wrap it up. So we're going to be back. One more football show to go today. That is our College Football Weekly show with Mitch Light from Athlon. We've got a lot to talk about on that show. We'll have our picks. We'll have our injury updates, our trends. We'll have Anthony Dasher on to talk Georgia football with the big Georgia-Florida game. Tomorrow we have our Jets show. Robert Zaglinski, who is with Windy City Gridiron, is going to join us to help preview Chicago and the Jets. So a lot of movement on the roster for the Jets this week with Powell going out on IR and they bring in a couple more players. So we'll have a lot of roster news on the Jets show tomorrow with Randy Lang from NewYorkJets.com. Again, Robert Zaglinski will be our special guest. By the way, next week I've already scheduled Jeff Hartman, who covers the Pittsburgh Steelers, to talk about the Pittsburgh-Baltimore game. That show is going to be next Wednesday on the OFN Today. Mark Daniels will also join us next week, UCF Central Florida football for the big Temple game. That one will be on Tuesday's OFN Today. So those are some of our guests already scheduled for next week. Thanks to Bill Huber. Thanks to Scott Engel. This is the OFN Today, final OFN Today for the week. OFN College Football Weekly coming up later on. You know the drill, everyone. Alpha, Mike, Foxtrot.